Shri Gurubhyam Namaha. This is Hemalata from Ponvidyashram. Today's session is continuation of chapter 2 from history book Our Pasts 1 from hunting gathering to growing food. In previous sessions we studied about the early humans who were nomadic throughout their life during Paleolithic age. Due to climate changes, the early human started to make changes in their habits. Now, we will see what kind of changes happened in the environment. Around 12,000 years ago, there was a major change in the climatic condition of the world. The heat was increased and a warm climatic condition prevailed on Earth. This led to the development of grasslands. Many grasslands emerged, which in turn led to an increase in the number of herbivores. Animals that survived on grass like goat, sheep, cattle, deer, and antelope are called as herbivores. When the availability of food, that is grass, increased, the population of animals also increased. How these things made changes in the habits of the early humans. People who hunted these animals began to follow them. They learned about their food habits and their breeding seasons. This may help the people to understand the activities of these animals and to start thinking about herding and rearing these animals for themselves. This is how the domestication process would have been evolved. When the grasslands emerged, several grain-bearing grasses including wheat, barley and rice grew naturally in different parts of the subcontinent. Men, women and children probably collected these grains for their food and learnt where they grew and when they ripened. This may lead them to think about growing plants on their own. This led to agricultural process. The beginning of farming and herding. The climate of the world was changing and so the plants and animals that people used as food also changed. To understand the changes happened around them, men, women and children probably observed and found several things. The places where edible plants were found, how seeds broke off stalks, fell on the ground, and new plants sprouted from them. They wanted to protect these grain bearing grasses from birds and animals. So, they started to protect them, which in return they could get more ripened seeds naturally. In this way, people became farmers. Women, men, and children could also attract and then tame animals by leaving food for them near their shelters. The first animal to be tamed, that means domesticated, was the wild ancestor of the dog. Later, people encouraged animals that were relatively gentle to come near the camps where they lived. These animals, such as sheep, goat, cattle, and also the pig, lived in herds, and most of them ate grass. Often people protected these animals from attacks by other wild animals. This is how they became herders. Children, can you think of any reasons why the dog was the first animal to be tamed? Now we will see about domestication process in detail. Domestication is the name given to the process in which people grow plants and look after animals. Very often, plants and animals that are tended by the people become different from wild plants and animals. This is because people select plants and animals for domestication. For example, they select those plants and animals that are not prone to any diseases. They also select plants that yield large size grains and have strong stalks capable of bearing the weight of the ripe grain. Seeds from selected plants are preserved and sown to ensure that new plants and seeds will have the same quality. Among animals, those that are relatively gentle are selected for breeding. As a result, gradually domesticated animals and plants become different from wild animals and plants. For example, the teeth and horns of wild animals are usually much larger than those of domesticated animals. Look at these two sets of teeth. Which do you think belong to a wild pig and which to a domesticated animal? Domestication was a gradual process that took place in many parts of the world. It began about 12,000 years ago. Virtually all the plant and animal produce that we use as food today is a result of domestication. Some of the earliest plants to be domesticated were wheat and barley. The earliest domesticated animals include sheep and goat. When the early people domesticated plants and animals, it gradually changed the way of life of them. The habitation, methods, and skills to survive had changed. New skills were practiced by them to handle the new situation. A new way of life. How many of you interested in growing plants or trees? Have you ever planted a seed and closely observed it how it grows? If you plant a seed, you will notice that it takes some time to grow. This may be for several days, weeks, months, and in some cases years. When people began growing plants, it meant that they had to stay in the same place for a long time, looking after the plants, watering, weeding, driving away animals and birds till the grain ripened. And then the grain had to be used carefully. As grain had to be used for food and also as seed to grow plants again, there is a need to store the grains. In many places, they began to make large clay pots, wove baskets, or dug pits into the ground to store grains. Do you think hunter gatherers would have made and used pots? Give reasons for your answers. Storing animals. Animals will multiply naturally. People protected it from wild animals and looked after them carefully. They provide milk, which was an important source of food, and meat whenever required. When grains were stored as food, animals were reared by people to store as a food. Apart from food, what are the other things that could have been obtained from animals? List them. Finding about the first farmers and herders. So in this map, if you notice, a number of blue squares are there. Each marks a site from where archaeologists have found evidence of early farmers and herders. These are found all over the subcontinent. Some of the most important ones are in the northwest, in present-day Kashmir, and in East and South India. To find out whether these sites were settlements of farmers and herders, scientists study evidence of plants and animal bones. One of the most exciting finds includes remains of burnt grain. These may have been burnt accidentally or on purpose. Scientists can identify these grains, and so we know that a number of crops were grown in different parts of the subcontinent. They can also identify the bones of different animals. So look at this table where evidence of grain and bones of domesticated animals have been found. These are just some of the sites from which grain and bones have been found. Look at this map. This is Mehergarh. It is in present day Pakistan. From here, wheat, barley, grains were found, and bones of sheep, goat, and cattle were found. This is Koldiva in present day Uttar Pradesh. Here, rice, fragmentary animal bones were found. Mahagara. It is in present day Uttar Pradesh. Here, rice, cattle, hoof marks on clay surface were found. Gufkhral in present day Kashmir. Wheat and lentil were found here. So this is Burzahom in present day Kashmir. Wheat and lentil, dog, cattle, sheep, goat, and buffalo, these remainings were found. This is Chirand in present day Bihar. Here, wheat, green gram, barley grains were found, and bones of buffalo and ox were also found. Hallur in present day Andhra Pradesh. Here, millets were found, and bones of cattle, sheep, goat, and pigs were also found. This is Payampalli in present day Andhra Pradesh. Here, black gram and millet grains were found, and bones of cattle, sheep, and pig were also found. In next session, we will study about the settled life of the early people.